Switch him over. Look
Yeah.
at him. David, you look amazing, sir. You shaved and everything for us?
Yeah, trim the beard a little bit.
Well, sir, how are you? Welcome to the Boston versus the book. Once again, we appreciate the time. This is going to be a conversation that I hope we don't have a lot, but it feels like we're going to have this conversation going a lot. But for those people that might be just waking up to what's going on here with a Colts cornerback / kick returner, how big of a story is it that this player basically admitted he's been betting on his own games?
It's a big story for sure. It seems like we keep hearing these incidents occurring. This was the 8th potential violation of the gambling policy in the NFL from a player over the last 5 years. And, previous 20, 25 years, we really didn't have any. So the magnitude of this one, with sources saying that he was placing maybe, upwards of 100 bets over an undisclosed amount of time. A lot of the bets were small, $25, $50, but there were some bets on games involving the Colts, and he's a Colts cornerback and kick returner. And obviously you should not be betting on games you're involved in. You should not be betting on the NFL. I keep saying this over and over on shows. If you want to play in the NFL, you cannot bet on the NFL. It is not much more, any more difficult than that. And for some reason, these players keep making these mistakes, putting their $1 million salaries at risk. And I don't get it.
DP, the policy is interesting. And I know you've dove deep into it. You've read it. You've seen it. You've talked about it. You continue to do it. And you do great work. What is your Twitter handle, by the way, so people can follow you on Twitter?
It's just my first and last name, at David Purdum.
There you go. All right. The policy that I've read as well is they get in trouble for where they are when they're placing the bets. Is that what the violation is here? Is that how they got him? Or is it, yes, you're not supposed to be betting on the games, but the policy reads like you can't do it on the team facilities. Am I reading it wrong?
No, that is correct. You are not allowed to place any bet, any sports bet on team facilities or traveling with the team. That was something that was implemented into the NFL gambling policy in 2018. That was right after the Supreme Court decision that kind of started us on this trek to have legalized sports betting around the nation. Along at that time, they also put in the stipulation that, hey, players, we're going to allow you to bet with legal sports books on other games, on the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. You're allowed to do that. That's fine. We're okay with that. You cannot bet on the NFL or anything involved with the NFL, and you cannot bet on anything on league premises, any kind of team facility. So that little nuance, I think I can kind of understand. Okay, we've all been through training procedure classes at work. Maybe sometimes we gloss over them. Maybe we didn't hear it. And some guy logs on and says, hey, I want to put my bet in on the NBA playoffs tonight. And he does it from the locker room. So he gets pinged, right? The geolocation service. Yeah. I can at least understand that. Betting on the NFL, no. In your heart, in your head, that's wrong, right? Nobody should have any kind of qualms about players being allowed to bet on the NFL. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. They shouldn't do it.
David, the article that came out in The Athletic, it's kind of unfortunate that it's coming all at once, but it feels like this is an avalanche of a week for stories. But about the fact that players who are not wanting to be named are saying that they do not understand the policy, that the NFL has not done a good enough job explaining exactly what you guys just talked about in terms of where they can bet, who they can bet, and how they can bet. Is that the fault of the league or the player for not listening to what the league is saying?
Ultimately, the players, they are getting the education. Whether they're absorbing it and understanding it, I don't know. It's apparently not, right? The league says they educate over 17,000 people. That's league personnel, coaches, referees. Everybody gets training on what is allowed from sports betting. So, like I said, you're in a training class for work, right? Sometimes you're just trying to get it over with. So I understand that. But you don't need any training to know that you should not be betting on the NFL. Am I correct? If you were involved in a game, you do not need training told you, hey, maybe I shouldn't bet on a game that I can, influence. That doesn't carry any water for me for them to say that, hey, we just didn't know we weren't allowed to bet on the NFL. That doesn't match
DP, is it on the books to report to the league about a player gambling. Like, so you have to educate the player first, or the personnel. I mean, it's not just players, it's a lot of personnel within the organization that can't bet on the games either. But does the book have to then geolocate them, catch them, find all this stuff out, and then send it back to the league? Or is the league creating its own, for lack of a better word, task force to then say, we're going to watch it and we're going to tell you when we think something's going on, and then come and inquire at the book? How does it work?
All of the above. The league does have sophisticated in-house technology that they are tracking and monitoring the sports betting market, looking for any anomalies, monitoring players, everybody that should not be betting. They have some sort of technology that tracks them. In addition, they have embedded themselves in the sports betting industry. They have open communications line with their sportsbook partners, with state regulators, and the geolocation services that are taking care of the sports betting market, right? You can't bet in certain states, so you got to have some kind of geolocation fencing around those states to prohibit that. When those bets are made, if it's made at a team facility, ping, something comes up, it may be flagged by state regulators. They may turn it over to the integrity providers services that also monitor and kind of facilitate the communication. And then it gets to the league. So it doesn't take long to get to the league. Sometimes the league finds it out themselves. Sometimes their partners do.
Isaiah Rodgers is the player who is accused, or at least admitted to have doing this. Not accused, he admitted to doing it, but he was doing it with a secondary, a third party, if you will. He was telling his bets, and they were making the plays. If you listen to people on the internet, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong here, but they've been saying players have been doing this forever, and the league has never investigated, has never really had an opinion publicly about it. Are we going to see a rash of this, or are we going to see just the NFL coming down harshly on all these players, 6 months to a year suspension, until it really gets hit home that they cannot do this?
First of all, my understanding is that the account was set up in one of his associates' names, but I believe he was placing the wagers. So just to make that little quick clear, but that's my understanding. It's firm. Yes, I absolutely believe we're going to see more. I've heard that there's going to be another wave of these coming. Over a dozen players are likely to are currently being investigated and looking into any potential gambling violations. And what I continue to think is we're kind of in a transition period. There's an academic theory that says basically society struggles in the early years to adjust to any kind of new illicit activity, kind of like betting, and that's brought into a regulated environment. People kind of figure out, well, what can I do? What can't I do? What are the rules? And so forth. And mistakes are made. And I believe we're in that process right now. Society is trying to adapt. All the players and athletes are trying to adapt. Eventually, we'll get these cases out there. More and more people will hear it. What happens to you? We're looking at if you were found to have bet on the NFL, the precedent is a minimum of a year suspension, and you can reapply, but it doesn't guarantee you're back in. So I think eventually, the more and more these cases come out, the more and more we spot them, players are going to learn, right? They got to. I just got to think there's too much money for them to lose in order to just make a $25, $50 bet. It's just not worth it.
It's crazy because yes, it was set up in an associate's name, and then a friend sets up an account, then you use it on team facilities, you get busted. If you don't use it on the team facilities, probably never discovered like this. So that's the one catch. The other catch is this, DP, where if you really want to bet, and I mean the answer is quick, it's right, it's abstinence. It's just simple. Don't do it. Well, when you tell kids not to do it, they do it. Okay. Where do they go? Like, where? Because isn't this driving that business, not just from players, but like if someone wants to bet, they're going to find a way to do it, right? That's the inevitability of the conversation.
Yep. And if you're willing to want to bet, and you're willing to try to get around the system and risk your career to place a bet on an NFL game, it's going to be tough to stop you. The best weapon they have is deterrence. Look, if you get caught, this are the penalties. We're seeing more and more people get caught because of the increased visibility that regulation has brought into the market. If this kind of things was going on, and it may have well been in the past offshore or with local bookmakers, we never heard about it. Now we have more visibility of the market than we've ever had, and it's going to clean up this part of the industry. They're going to have to figure out that, hey, I'm putting a lot at risk to try to place this bet. If you do want to bet, you're a player and you want to bet, great. Don't bet on the NFL.
Right. Find something else, right?
Go home, grab you a beer, sit down and watch the game, NBA playoffs, and place your wager with a legal sports book. You're fine, right?
It's like speeding, isn't it, in that regard? And like a lot of the critics and people answer and barking back and whatever, you're speeding. People speed all the time, but until they get caught and get a ticket, get pulled over, and even then they don't slow down.
Sure.
That's the hard part, right? The enforcement after. They're making examples of guys all the time. They just did it with Detroit. They cut guys that day. Mm-hmm. Is it enough?
No, it's not enough at this point because it's still happening. So until they get it through their heads, and you mentioned speeding tickets. You ever got a speeding ticket that cost you a year of your $1 million salary, Dave? I know you make the big bucks.
What?
Yeah. Have you ever got a speeding ticket? No. I mean, this is costing you your career.
I've got speeding tickets, but I never got $1 million salary, DP. I mean, we're going to work on that together. I'll help you. You help me. Let's go.
Underpaid. But what is the wrinkle to this story the fact that he was betting on his own team? Is that the other wrinkle that makes this potentially entering into a legal realm versus anti or against NFL rules?
Well, it is against state regulations for anybody involved, athletes, to place wagers on games that they're involved in, leagues they're involved in. So state regulations, you violate
in Indiana, or is that pretty much universal?
In Indiana. Most states do have that kind of stipulation there. How often is it enforced? I don't know. If you violate a gambling regulation, are you violating the law? There's all kinds of little nuances in there, right? That I'm not smart enough to know, but ultimately, if you're betting on the team that you're involved in, whether you're betting on them or against them or on a player prop that's involved in that game, that's bad. You're going to get in big trouble. And this could be probably very easily could be the worst case we've heard so far out of the NFL gambling suspensions.
Is the NFL doing this now because it's the summer? Would they do this in season? Like, is there ever there's the potential of a high profile player in the middle of the season getting caught and suspended for it?
Well, we haven't had that yet. Josh Shaw, who was our first example, he was an Arizona Cardinals cornerback. He was on the injured reserve, and he got caught in November placing bets on the NFL. He wasn't around the team at the time. But no, we haven't had anything, a big player named that's come out during the season. So whether it takes them a while to investigate it, my understanding is this investigation was ongoing in the winter. So it probably takes them a while to make sure they get everything crossed, and so forth. So that's a good question. I don't have the answer. Would the NFL shut somebody down, a star player, a star quarterback, if they were found to have bet? I would think they would, but we haven't seen it yet.
Last one for me, DP, and then we'll throw it to Matt and we'll get you out of here. One, you look fantastic. You look like you've been playing pickleball a little bit. You're in shape. I'm working on this pickleball thing because when you come out to Vegas, I'm not ready for you. Never mind. Who's going to win the NFC South? Because I know you're it's in your pocket of the country, and you're a little biased because you're a Saints guy and all this other stuff. But you covered the Falcons in the past. I'm looking at season wins. We're going to talk about it going forward. Coming up in the summer, in addition to this proxy service and all this other stuff that we have going on. Who's winning the NFC South, DP? Come on.
Boy, it's the battle of the worst, right? I'm going to say I just don't have any faith in my Saints anymore.
No?
Coaching
Derek Carr. You got Derek Carr.
I know. We got to upgrade a quarterback. Great. Yeah, upgrade a quarterback. But we lost one of our co-defensive coordinators to the Falcons. Some of the coaching decisions last year, we just did not look well coached, in my opinion. With all respect to Coach Allen, there's going to be a drop-off from Sean Payton to whoever. And it was glaring to me. And so I'm not 100% sold on the Saints. I thought the Falcons were an improved team last year. I could see them making some noise. In fact, this division is so wide open. There's not big differences. They're not a glaring favorite, in my opinion. So I'm going to take the Falcons.
We'll get out of here on this. We, on this show, have talked a lot about what's happened over in England with the regulations that have clamped down harshly on the gaming industry and the marketing that has gone on. Canada now is starting to take a look at this. How long are we away from in this country having a really hard conversation about who can be marketed to and what type of personality is allowed to be in marketing campaigns?
I think it's ongoing as we speak. Some politicians in New York have introduced some legislation to prohibit any kind of sports betting ads. I think we're going to have that conversation. And from the beginning, I was a little bit always surprised at how aggressive the industry came out, the sports books came out, everything. But the only thing I think of, hey, I'm starting a new industry, let's see how much we can get. And then when they come after us, okay, we'll concede a couple things. So it looks like you're giving up and scaling it back a little bit. So I do think there's going to be some sort of backlash here in the coming years, if not this year, the next couple, that will scale back advertising, and it will, reduce the advertising and be a little bit of a hurdle for the industry to overcome. I still am one that believes there's going to be some consolidation. I still think we have a dozen or so sports books, and I think that'll get cut down significantly. You'll have massive handle, maybe smaller margins, and that's probably what I see in the future. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think something's backlash is coming.
David, thank you for the time. Really appreciate you coming on today.
You got it, guys.